Ronald Ellison thought he was just being a gentleman by taking a struggling stranger out for Christmas Eve dinner. But the moment Ella Lyons slid a faded Polaroid across the table, his heart stopped. It was a photo of his own daughter, taken in a city he's never visited, dated 2 years before he legally adopted her. The restaurant was called the Silver Ornament, and it smelled like money trying to buy happiness. Expensive mulled wine, overpriced duck, the kind of place where the waiters wore white gloves and judged you by the watch on your wrist. Roland Ellison sat alone at a table meant for two, adjusting his dark jacket for the third time in 5 minutes, feeling the stares of everyone who passed. His date hadn't shown. Again, the hostess had offered a sympathetic smile that made him feel worse, not better. Outside, snow fell in thick sheets, turning the Chicago streets into a Christmas card that nobody wanted to be inside. Roland watched through a frosted window as people rushed past, hunched against the cold, their breath forming small clouds that disappeared as quickly as they came. That's when he saw her. Ella Lyons stood beneath the awning of a closed bookstore across the street, wearing a red coat that had seen too many winters and not enough care. She wasn't begging. She wasn't moving. She just stood there with a stillness that felt almost regal, like a queen waiting for a kingdom that would never come. Her long brown hair hung in waves past her shoulders, and even from this distance, Roland could see she was younger than the coat suggested. Maybe mid-30s. Maybe older. The street had a way of aging people in ways a calendar never could. Roland made a decision that would destroy everything he thought he knew. He stepped outside into the bitter cold and crossed the street, his expensive shoes crunching in the fresh snow. When he reached her, she looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, but still held something careful and watchful behind them. "Excuse me," Roland said, his architect's mind already calculating angles and outcomes. "I have a table reserved inside. My date didn't show. Would you like to have dinner? It's Christmas Eve. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve." Ella tilted her head slightly, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Then she smiled. Not a grateful smile. Not a surprised smile. A knowing smile. "The Silver Ornament," she said quietly. "Table 14. By the window." Roland's stomach tightened. "How did you—" "Lucky guess," Ella interrupted, and started walking toward the restaurant before he could finish his question. "Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and it reminds us that hope and second chances are universal languages." The moment Ella walked through the door of the Silver Ornament, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Conversations stuttered. Heads turned. The hostess's smile became a thin line of professional discomfort as Roland guided Ella to his table, his hand hovering near her elbow without quite touching the worn fabric of her red coat. The waiter approached with a kind of forced politeness usually reserved for people who'd wandered into the wrong tax bracket. Roland ordered for both of them, prime rib, roasted vegetables, the works, but Ella held up one hand. "Just hot tea," she said. "Earl Grey, if you have it. Nothing else." The waiter blinked. Roland started to protest, but something in Ella's expression stopped him. She had the hands of a pianist, but the coat of a ghost, and the contradiction made him curious in a way he couldn't quite name. "You can order whatever you want," Roland said once the waiter had retreated. "It's my treat, really. I know what I want," Ella replied, her voice soft but firm. "And it's not food." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Roland fidgeted with his napkin, suddenly aware of how ridiculous this situation was. He'd invited a homeless woman to dinner on Christmas Eve because his date had stood him up, and now he was sitting across from someone who seemed to know exactly how to place she was but didn't care. "I should tell you about myself," Roland began, falling back on the social scripts that had always kept him safe. "I'm an architect. I design mostly residential projects, high-end homes, custom work. I have a daughter, Lily. She's 5. Well, she'll be 6 in March. We have this thing we do, a pinky promise rule. We never lie to each other, ever. It's important to me that she grows up knowing she can trust." "The nursery," Ella interrupted, her eyes fixed on the candle between them. "Willow green. That's the exact shade of paint on her walls, isn't it? Willow green with white crown molding. And there's a mobile above her bed. Stars and moons. Silver and gold. You hung it yourself even though the instructions said it needed 2 people." The restaurant noise faded to nothing. Roland's hand froze halfway to his water glass. His mouth went dry. "How could you possibly know that?" Ella didn't answer immediately. She just watched him with those careful, watchful eyes while the waiter returned with her tea. She waited until he left again before she spoke. "You tucked her in tonight before you came here," Ella continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "You read her the story about the mouse who wanted to be a lion. It's her favorite. You do all the voices. She laughs at the snake's hiss every single time, even though she knows it's coming. And you kissed her forehead exactly 3 times before you turn out the light, because 3 is her lucky number." Roland felt his chest constrict. The tie around his neck suddenly felt too tight, too small, suffocating. "Who are you?" The question came out harder than he'd intended. "Did someone send you? Is this some kind of joke? Because if it is, it's not funny. Not even close to funny." Ella reached into the pocket of her red coat with a slowness that felt deliberate, calculated. When her hand emerged, she was holding something small and square, a photograph. She placed it on the table between them, sliding it across the white cloth with one finger until it stopped directly in front of Roland's plate. He looked down. His entire world collapsed into that single square of faded paper. The photograph was old, a Polaroid, the kind that develops right in front of you, the image emerging from chemical fog like a secret being revealed. The edges were yellowed and soft from being carried in a pocket for too long. There was a crease down the middle where it had been folded, and the date stamp in the bottom right corner read, December 14th, 2019. But it was the subject of the photograph that made Roland's heart stop completely. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, dark curls, wide eyes, a small birthmark on her left cheek that looked like a comma. Lily, his Lily. Except it couldn't be Lily because Roland had adopted Lily in March of 2021, when she was officially recorded as being 14 months old. The Heritage Group, the agency that had facilitated the adoption, had provided all the documentation, medical records, birth certificates, everything legally airtight and professionally processed. Roland had paid them $45,000 to make sure every detail was perfect, and yet here was a photograph of his daughter, unmistakably his daughter, dated 2 years before she was supposedly born. "That's impossible," Roland whispered, but his voice had no conviction behind it. He picked up the photograph with shaking hands, bringing it closer to candlelight as if better illumination would somehow make the image make sense. This can't be her. The dates don't match. They don't. The dates are exactly right, Ella said. Her tea sat untouched in front of her, steam rising in slow spirals. The dates are the only honest thing in this entire situation. Everything else is a lie. Roland set the photograph down carefully, afraid it might disintegrate under the pressure of his confusion. Where did you get this? Who gave it to you? Nobody gave it to me. Ella leaned forward slightly, her long hair falling over one shoulder. I took it 3 years ago in Milwaukee, outside the Harbor House Medical Center. That building in the background. You can barely see it, but it's there. That's a private pediatric facility. One of the places the Heritage Group uses for what they call staging. Staging? Roland's mind was racing, trying to connect dots that didn't want to connect. What are you talking about? I adopted Lily through completely legal channels. I have all the paperwork, birth certificate, medical history, court orders. Everything was legitimate. I checked. I double-checked. I triple-checked because I'm her father, and I needed to make sure. Your father, Ella agreed, but you didn't know what you were checking. The paperwork was real. The signatures were real. But the story behind the paperwork? Roland. That was fiction written by people who get paid very well to make lies look like truth. The restaurant continued around them, as if the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. Wealthy couples laughed over wine. Waiters glided between tables with practiced efficiency. Christmas music played softly from hidden speakers. And Roland Ellison, meticulous architect and devoted single father, felt the foundation of his entire life beginning to crack. You're saying they lied about her age. I'm saying they did much more than that. Ella finally lifted her teacup, cradling it between her palms as if trying to absorb its warmth. The Heritage Group doesn't just process adoptions, Roland. They engineer them. They take children who are considered difficult to place. Too old, too traumatized, too aware, and they make them younger on paper. Erase a year. Erase 2. Sometimes 3. It makes them more attractive to prospective parents who want babies, not children with memories and questions and complicated pasts. Roland wanted to stand up, wanted to walk out, wanted to call the police or a lawyer, or anyone who could make this conversation stop happening. But he couldn't move. His body had forgotten how. Why are you telling me this? He asked. What do you want? Money? Is this blackmail? Because if you think you can. Check the bottom of her left foot, Ella interrupted. Her voice was gentle now, almost sad. There's a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. The agency told you it was a scar from a medical procedure when she was an infant. They lied. It's a family mark. My family mark. The room tilted slightly. Roland gripped the edge of the table. Your family. The words came out flat, emotionless. His brain had stopped processing information correctly. You're saying you're related to Lily. I'm saying more than that. Ella set down her teacup with a soft clink against the saucer. I'm saying I was there when she was born. I'm saying I held her in the delivery room when her mother, my sister, hemorrhaged out and the doctors couldn't stop the bleeding. I'm saying the Heritage Group told me she died too. Complications. Premature. Didn't survive the night. They showed me paperwork. Death certificate. Everything official and final and heartbreaking. I buried an empty casket. Roland, I mourn a child who was never dead. Roland's hand moved toward his phone in his jacket pocket. This was insane. This woman was insane. She'd somehow gotten a photograph, maybe stolen it, maybe faked it, and now she was constructing an elaborate story designed to exploit his fears. But then he remembered the birthmark, the crescent moon shape on the bottom of Lily's left foot. He'd asked the agency about it during the initial placement, and they'd explained it exactly as Ella had just said. A minor scar from a medical procedure in infancy. Nothing to worry about. Fully healed. Just a cosmetic mark that would fade with time. Except it hadn't faded. And now, looking at Ella's hands wrapped around her teacup, he saw it. On the inside of her right wrist. A small crescent-shaped birthmark. Nearly identical to the one on Lily's foot. His phone was halfway out of his pocket when Ella spoke again. "Don't call the police yet," she said quietly, "because there's something else you need to know." Roland's fingers tightened around his phone. Every rational instinct he possessed screamed at him to end this conversation immediately. Call security. Report this woman to someone with authority. Get as far away from her and her impossible claims as possible. But something kept him frozen in place. Maybe the birthmark, maybe the photograph, maybe just a terrible certainty in Ella's eyes that suggested she was telling a truth he didn't want to hear. 5 minutes, Ella said. "Give me 5 minutes to explain, and then you can do whatever you think is right. But Roland, if you walk away now without hearing the rest, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you made the right choice. And more importantly, Lily will spend the rest of hers in danger you can't even see coming." Danger? Roland's voice came out sharper than he intended. A couple at the next table glanced over, their expressions curious. He lowered his voice to barely above a whisper. "What are you talking about? Lily is safe. She's home with Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor. She's watching a Christmas movie and drinking hot chocolate, and she's perfectly." "Is Mrs. Patterson the one with the gray Honda?" Ella asked. "The one who parks in the driveway with the basketball hoop?" Roland's blood went cold. "How do you know where I live?" "I don't." Ella's expression didn't change. "But the man parked outside your house in the black sedan knows. He's been there since 7:30 tonight, right around the time you left for this restaurant. He works for the Heritage Group. His name is Marcus Venn, and his job title is officially Client Relations Specialist. But what he actually does is monitor high-value placements. Children who might become problems. Families who might start asking questions." Roland felt his chest constrict again. This was too specific, too detailed. Either this woman was telling the truth, or she was working with someone who had access to information that should have been impossible to obtain. "You're lying," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, he was remembering the black sedan he'd noticed parked 3 houses down when he'd backed out his driveway earlier. He'd thought it was odd. Their neighborhood didn't get much street parking on Christmas Eve, but he dismissed it as someone visiting family. Even if there's a car, it doesn't mean... "Call Mrs. Patterson," Ella interrupted. "Ask her to look out the front window. Ask her if there's a black Lexus sedan parked on the street with someone sitting in the driver's seat. Ask her if the person inside has been there for the last hour and a half, not moving, not getting out, just watching your house like he's waiting for something." Roland's hand was shaking as he pulled up Mrs. Patterson's number. He almost didn't press the call button, because if he made this call and Ella was wrong, It would prove she was just a disturbed woman with a convincing story and a stolen photograph. But if she was right, the phone rang twice before Mrs. Patterson answered, her cheerful voice cutting through the silence. "Roland, is everything okay? Your date going well?" "Margaret, I need you to do me a favor." He tried to keep his voice steady, professional, like he was asking about a package delivery, and not confirming whether his daughter was being surveilled by criminals. "Can you look out the front window for me? Tell me if you see any cars parked on the street." A pause. The sound of footsteps. Then, "Oh, yes, there's a black car. Lexus, I think. Nice one. It's been there since you left, actually. I noticed because nobody on the street drives a Lexus except the Hendersons, and theirs is white. Should I be worried? Do you want me to call?" "No." Roland forced a word out calmly, even though his heart was hammering against his ribs. "No, it's fine. Probably just someone visiting. Thanks, Margaret. Give Lily a kiss for me when she goes to bed." He ended the call and set the phone down on the table with exaggerated care, as if it might explode if handled roughly. Ella waited. "How?" Roland asked. "How did you know?" "Because I used to be one of them," Ella said. "Not the watchers, the facilitators. I was a nurse at Harbor House for 6 years. I thought I was helping children find families. I thought the Heritage Group was one of the good ones, ethical, careful, thorough, until I found the files. Until I realized what staging actually meant. They weren't processing normal adoptions, Roland. They were buying children from vulnerable mothers, falsifying records, aging them down on paper, and selling them to wealthy people who asked just enough questions to feel good about themselves, but not enough to see what was really happening. And you expect me to believe you just discovered this conspiracy, and they let you walk away?" Roland knew he sounded defensive, but he couldn't help it. Every word Ella spoke was another nail in the coffin of the life he'd built. If what you're saying is true, they would have silenced you. They would have... They tried. Ella pulled back the sleeve of her red coat slightly, revealing a thin scar that ran from her wrist halfway to her elbow. 2 years ago, after I confronted my supervisor about the discrepancies I'd found, someone broke into my apartment, made it look like a robbery, took my laptop, my phone, my professional files. But they also made sure I understood the message. Keep quiet or disappear. I went into hiding, stayed in shelters, moved every few weeks, became invisible. Because invisible people don't get silenced, they're already gone. Roland stared at the scar, at the photograph, at the crescent birthmark on Ella's wrist. The pieces were assembling themselves into a picture he desperately didn't want to see. "Why now?" he asked. "Why contact me after 2 years?" "Because I've been looking for her." Ella's voice cracked slightly, the first real emotion breaking through her careful composure. "For Lily, for my niece. I knew she hadn't died, but I didn't know where they'd taken her or who they'd placed her with. The Heritage Group's records are locked down tight. I've been searching adoption announcements, social media, school registrations, and 3 months ago, I found a photograph you posted on LinkedIn. You and Lily at a park. You tagged the location. You mentioned her age. And I knew it was her. So what do you want?" Roland's voice was harder now, protective. "Are you trying to take her from me? Because I don't care what you say about paperwork or conspiracies or..." Check the bottom of her left foot, Roland. The word stopped him cold. There's a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon, Ella continued, leaning across the table, her voice urgent and low. The agency told you it was a scar from a medical procedure. They lied. It's a family mark. My family mark. And the man who sold her to you, Marcus Van, the one parked in the black sedan outside your house right now. He's not there to protect her. He's there to make sure you don't figure out the truth. Because the moment you start asking the wrong questions, the moment you become a liability instead of a grateful client, they will take her back. They will erase her placement. They will make her disappear into another family, another identity, another set of lies, and you will never see her again. Ella reached across the table and gripped Roland's hand with surprising strength. Her palms were warm from the teacup, but her fingers were ice cold. I'm not here to take her from you, she said. I'm here because you're the only person in the world who loves her as much as I do. And right now, we're the only two people who can save her from the system that's been using her as a commodity since the day she was born. Roland looked down at their joined hands, at the crescent birthmark on Ella's wrist, at the photograph of his daughter, their daughter, dated 2 years before she was supposed to exist. And for the first time in his carefully ordered, meticulously planned life, Roland Ellison made a decision based entirely on faith instead of facts. Tell me everything, he said. If you are listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I would not even reach 300 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel by hitting the subscribe button. You can also turn on the notification bell to be updated when a new video is posted. And let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. Ella released Roland's hand and sat back, her expression shifting from urgent to tactical. This was the part she'd been preparing for, Roland realized. This was why she'd waited outside the Silver Ornament in the freezing cold instead of approaching him at home or work. She needed him isolated, unsettled, and just desperate enough to listen without immediately calling the authorities. The Heritage Group doesn't operate like a normal adoption agency, Ella began, her voice low and measured. Normal agencies follow strict regulations, home studies, background checks, waiting periods. They match children with families based on compatibility and need. But the Heritage Group operates more like a boutique service for wealthy clients who don't want to wait 3 years for a healthy infant. They find children who've already fallen through cracks of the system, kids in foster care with terminated parental rights, children of addicted mothers who can't care for them, babies born to women in crisis who don't have resources or support, legal orphans technically, but too old or too complicated for traditional adoption. Roland listened, his architect's brain automatically organizing the information into structural frameworks, so they prey on vulnerable populations. Worse than that, they create opportunities. Ella's eyes were hard now, remembering. They have scouts, people who work in hospitals, shelters, rehab facilities. They identify pregnant women in crisis situations and offer them money, not for their babies directly, because that's illegal trafficking, but for medical expenses and recovery support, amounts that are significant enough to seem like salvation when you're desperate, but small enough to not raise red flags. 20,000, 30,000, They make the mother sign extensive documentation that looks like medical consent, but actually includes clauses that terminate parental rights under specific circumstances. What circumstances? Failure to complete rehabilitation programs. Failure to maintain stable housing. Failure to attend mandatory medical appointments. Ella ticked them off on her fingers. Requirements that are designed to be impossible for someone in crisis to meet. And when the mother inevitably fails, the Heritage Group invokes the clauses. Legal custody transfers to them. And then the real work begins. Roland's stomach turned. The staging, Ella confirmed. They take a child who might be 2 or 3 years old enough to have memories, language, personality, and they create an entirely new identity. New birth certificate with a falsified earlier birth date. Medical records that show developmental delays to explain why a 3-year-old acts older than the age on paper. Sometimes they even use mild sedation during the initial placement period to keep the child docile and confused while they adjust to the new environment. By the time the child is fully alert and bonding with their new family, the parents have already accepted the official story. Any behaviors that seem too advanced get explained away as remarkable development or exceptional intelligence. Roland thought about Lily's vocabulary, the way she'd known her alphabet before he'd taught her, how Mrs. Patterson had commented that she seemed unusually mature for her supposed age. He'd been proud. He'd thought he was doing a good job as a father, nurturing her natural abilities. Now, he wondered if he'd just been blind. "How many children?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I documented 43 cases during my time at Harbor House," Ella said, "but that was just one facility in one city. The Heritage Group operates in 7 states that I know of. If each location processes even 20 placements a year," she let the math speak for itself. Hundreds of children, maybe more, all of them erased and rewritten like rough drafts being edited into more marketable final copies. Why hasn't anyone exposed this? Roland demanded. Journalists, lawyers, child welfare advocates. Someone should have noticed. Some people have noticed. Ella's expression was grim. There was a social worker in Ohio who started asking questions about irregularities in Heritage Group placements. She died in a car accident 6 months later. A journalist in Missouri began investigating adoption fraud in the Midwest. His house burned down with all his research inside, and he stopped pursuing the story. People who get too close either get bought off, scared off, or removed from the equation entirely. And you, I got scared off. Ella's admission was quiet but honest. After the break-in, after they made it clear what would happen if I kept pushing, I ran. I chose survival over justice. But then I found out about Lily. Found out she was alive, placed, living with someone who clearly loved her, and I realized I couldn't stay invisible anymore. Because if they're monitoring your placement, it means they're worried about something. And if they're worried, it means they're planning to act. Roland's phone buzzed on the table. A text from Mrs. Patterson. "Lily's asking when you'll be home. Should I let her wait up?" He looked at the message, then at Ella, then at the photograph of his daughter that shouldn't exist. "What's the plan?" he asked. "Assuming I believe you, and I'm not saying I do completely, but assuming I believe enough to not call the police right now, what exactly do you expect me to do? March into the Heritage Group headquarters and demand answers? Confront the man in the black sedan? Go public with a story that will sound absolutely insane, without concrete proof. I have proof. Ella reached into her other pocket and pulled out a small USB drive, setting it beside the photograph. Encrypted files I smuggled out of Harbor House before I disappeared. Birth records that don't match placement dates. Financial transactions showing payments to expectant mothers that coincide with later adoptions. Email chains discussing inventory and product placement, like we were selling furniture instead of finding homes for children. Roland stared at the USB drive like it was a live grenade. Why not take this to the FBI? To Child Protective Services? To someone who can actually do something with it? Because I'm homeless, Roland. Ella's voice was sharp with bitter reality. I'm a woman with no address, no employment, no credibility. I show up at a federal building with conspiracy theory about wealthy adoption agencies, and I'm escorted out before I finish my first sentence. But you're a successful architect. You have a mortgage, a reputation, a daughter you adopted through official channels. You're the perfect plaintiff, the person who can't be dismissed as crazy or vindictive or lying for attention. You want me to be the face of this. Understanding dawned cold and heavy. You want me to risk everything I built, my career, my standing in the community, my relationship with Lily, to expose a conspiracy that might get me killed or discredited or both. No. Ella leaned forward again, and for the first time, Roland saw real desperation in her eyes. I want you to save your daughter, because right now, the man outside your house isn't just watching. He's waiting to see if you're a problem, waiting to see if you'll start digging. And the moment the Heritage Group decides you're a liability, they won't just take Lily back. They'll erase your adoption like it never happened. They'll claim you violated terms of the placement agreement. They'll produce documentation showing you were unstable, unsuitable, dangerous. And you'll lose her forever into a system designed to make children disappear. Roland's hands were shaking again. He pressed them flat against the table, trying to ground himself in something solid and real. I need time, he said. I need to think. I need to verify. You don't have time, Ella interrupted. That USB drive contains files that are date-stamped. If the Heritage Group realizes I've made contact with you, they'll move fast. Tonight, Roland, you have to decide tonight. She stood up, leaving her tea untouched and the USB drive on the table beside the photograph. I'll be at the Madison Street shelter until midnight, she said. After that, I'm gone. Disappeared again. Because I can't risk staying visible if you're not willing to fight. She pulled her red coat tighter around herself. Check Lily's foot. Verify the birthmark. Think about every time she seemed too advanced for her age. Think about why a man is sitting outside your house on Christmas Eve watching your windows. And then decide who you want to be. The father who protected a comfortable lie, or the father who burned down heaven to save his daughter from hell. Ella walked toward the restaurant door, her weathered red coat a splash of defiant color against the elegant surroundings. Every eye in the restaurant followed her, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Roland sat alone at the table with $40 worth of uneaten food, a photograph that shouldn't exist, and a USB drive that might contain either salvation or complete destruction. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Patterson. She's getting sleepy. I'm going to tuck her in. See you soon. Roland picked up the photograph with trembling fingers and looked at his daughter's face. 3 years old in the image. Impossible. Undeniable. He thought about the crescent moon birthmark, about her advanced vocabulary, about the willow green nursery that Ella had described in perfect detail, about the black sedan parked outside his house, and he thought about the pinky promise rule, the sacred agreement he had with Lily that they would never lie to each other, ever. He'd built his entire relationship with his daughter on that foundation of trust and honesty. Now he had to decide if he was willing to burn everything down to keep that promise. Roland sat in the restaurant for another 20 minutes after Ella left, the photograph and USB drive in front of him like pieces of evidence at a crime scene. The waiter had given up trying to clear his untouched meal and now just avoided his table entirely, shooting concerned glances from across the room. The other diners had returned to their own Christmas celebrations, the homeless woman in the red coat already forgotten in favor of wine and dessert and the comfortable rhythms of wealth. Finally, Roland stood. He left $200 bills on the table, far more than the meal cost, but he needed to leave quickly and cleanly. He pocketed the photograph and USB drive, put on his coat, and walked out into the Chicago snow. The black sedan was exactly where Mrs. Patterson had described it when Roland pulled onto a street 40 minutes later. A Lexus, expensive, idling at the curb 3 houses down, with someone visible in the driver's seat. Roland slowed his car deliberately as he passed, trying to see the face behind the wheel, but the person ducked down before he could get a clear look. Not innocent, not visiting family. Watching. Roland parked in his driveway, his mind racing. He could confront the sedan directly, march over and demand to know what this person was doing outside his home. But that would show his hand. That would signal to whoever was watching that he was aware, suspicious, potentially dangerous. Instead, he forced himself to walk calmly to his front door, unlock it with steady hands, and step inside as if this were just another Christmas Eve coming home from a disappointing date. Mrs. Patterson met him in the hallway, smiling warmly. She tried to stay awake for you, but she crashed about 20 minutes ago, out like a light the moment her head hit the pillow. Thanks, Margaret. Roland managed to keep his voice normal. I appreciate you watching her. Any time, dear. Merry Christmas. She gathered her things and left, completely oblivious to the surveillance happening on the street or the revolution happening inside Roland's chest. The moment the door closed behind her, Roland moved. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart hammering as he approached Lily's bedroom. The door was cracked open, spilling soft nightlight, glow into the hallway. He stepped inside quietly. Lily was exactly as Mrs. Patterson had described. Completely asleep, curled on her side with her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. Her dark curls spread across the pillow. The comma-shaped birthmark on her left cheek was barely visible in the dim light. Roland knelt beside the bed, his hands shaking. Carefully, slowly, he lifted the edge of her blanket and exposed her left foot. There on the sole was the crescent moon. The mark he'd been told was a surgical scar. The mark that Ella claimed was a family birthmark. He stared at it for a long time, memorizing every curve, every detail. Then he gently covered Lily's foot again and sat back on his heels, the full weight of his reality crashing down. Everything he believed about his daughter's origins was a lie. The paperwork, the official explanations, the carefully constructed narrative the Heritage Group had sold him, all of it fiction designed to make him feel secure, while they profited from human trafficking dressed up as legitimate adoption. Roland looked at his daughter's sleeping face, and something fundamental shifted inside him. He'd spent his entire career building structures designed to be permanent, stable, resistant to decay and collapse. He'd applied the same philosophy to his life. Careful planning, proper documentation, everything organized and legally sound. But some structures needed to be demolished before better ones could be built in their place. He stood, left Lily's room, and went downstairs to his office. The USB drive went into his computer. The files loaded slowly, each folder revealing another layer of the Heritage Group's systematic fraud. Birth certificates with obviously altered dates. Financial records showing payments labeled as medical assistance that coincided precisely with adoption placements. Email exchanges discussing children by case numbers instead of names, calculating market value based on age, appearance, and perceived health. And there, buried in a subfolder labeled Milwaukee Placements 2019 to 2020, was a file with Lily's original name, her real birthday, her mother's information, her aunt's contact details. Ella Lyons, listed as emergency contact, listed as next of kin, listed as the person who was told her niece had died. Roland printed everything, every document, every email, every piece of evidence. He created multiple backups of the files, storing them in cloud accounts, sending them to his personal email, making sure that even if the original USB drive disappeared, the information would survive. Then he did something that would have been unthinkable 48 hours ago. He picked up his phone and texted a number he'd copied from Ella's file, Madison Street Shelter. "I'm coming to get you. We have work to do." The response came almost immediately. "I'll be waiting outside." Roland looked at the clock. 11:15 on Christmas Eve. In 45 minutes, the day would shift from celebration to reckoning. He went back upstairs and stood in the doorway of Lily's room one more time, watching her sleep. She had no idea her entire world was about to change. No idea that the father she trusted was about to do something that might protect her or might destroy everything they'd built together. But Roland knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would rather burn down every comfortable lie than let his daughter live one more day as someone's commodity. "I promise," he whispered into the darkness, "I promise you'll always know the truth, even when it hurts, even when it's complicated, even when it changes everything." It was the same promise he'd made when he first brought her home. The pinky promise rule. Never lie to each other. Ever. He was about to make good on that promise in ways he'd never imagined. Roland grabbed his coat, checked on Lily one last time, and walked out into the cold Christmas night. The black sedan was still there, still watching. But Roland didn't care anymore. Let them watch. Let them report back to their handlers. Let the Heritage Group know that one of their successful placements was about to become their biggest problem. Because Roland Ellison wasn't an architect anymore. He was a father going to war. Ella was standing outside the Madison Street Shelter exactly as she promised, the red coat wrapped tight against the bitter wind. When Roland's car pulled up, she didn't look surprised. She just opened the passenger door and slid inside, bringing with her the smell of cold air and the faint scent of the shelter's industrial soap. "You checked the birthmark," she said. "Not a question. I checked everything." Roland handed her his phone, showing her the printed document stacked on the back seat. Birth certificate, medical records, financial transactions. All of it. You were right about all of it. Ella's expression flickered with something that might have been relief or might have been grief. I wish I'd been wrong. What happens now? Roland asked, pulling away from the curb. We go to the FBI. The media? What's the play? First, we get Lily somewhere safe. Ella's voice was firm, decisive. The moment the Heritage Group realizes you know the truth, they'll move to reclaim her. We need to disappear for a few days while we get the evidence to the right people. Lawyers who specialize in adoption fraud. Journalists who can't be bought or intimidated. Federal investigators who have jurisdiction over interstate trafficking. Disappear where? I know a place. 3 hours north. A farm owned by a woman who helps people in situations like ours. Families caught in systems that were supposed to protect them, but ended up exploiting them instead. She'll give us shelter while we build our case. Roland thought about his carefully ordered life, his architecture firm, his mortgage, his reputation in the community. Everything he'd worked for over the past decade. Then he thought about Lily's crescent moon birthmark, about the black sedan outside his house, about the pinky promise rule. We leave tonight, he said. Right now, before they have time to make their move. Ella nodded. You pack essentials. I'll keep watch the sedan. We have maybe an hour before they realize something's changed. Roland drove home one last time, parked in the driveway, and moved to his house with the efficiency of someone who'd mentally rehearsed the scenario 100 times in the past hour. Clothes for Lily, documents, cash, laptop, everything that mattered fit into 2 duffel bags. Mrs. Patterson's house was dark when he carried Lily, still sleeping, out to the car. The black sedan was gone from its watching post, which meant either they'd given up surveillance or they were repositioning. Roland chose to believe neither option and just drove. Ella guided him north through empty Christmas night streets, her directions confident and precise. As they left Chicago behind, the snow began to fall harder, covering their tracks as thoroughly as any professional escape artist could have planned. Lily woke up somewhere near the Wisconsin border, confused and sleepy in the back seat. Daddy? Where are we going? Roland looked at her in the rear-view mirror, his heart breaking and rebuilding itself at the same time. On an adventure. Starlight, he said, using her secret nickname without thinking. A really important adventure. Ella turned to look at him, her eyes wide with recognition. She'd used that nickname in the restaurant. He hadn't noticed at the time, too shocked by everything else. But Lily had always called herself Starlight when she played pretend. Roland had assumed it was just a child's imagination. Now he understood it was a memory, a piece of her original identity that the Heritage Group hadn't managed to erase. Will you tell me about it? Lily asked, yawning. About the adventure? Roland met Ella's eyes. She nodded just slightly. Yes, Roland said. I'll tell you everything. But first, I want you to meet someone very special. Someone who's been looking for you for a very long time. Ella reached back and took Lily's small hand in hers, and for the first time since entering the restaurant, she smiled. A real smile, sad and hopeful and fierce all at once. Hi, sweetheart, Ella said softly. My name is Aunt Ella, and I have so many stories to tell you about where you came from and who you really are. Lily looked at her with those wide, intelligent eyes that had always seemed too knowing for her supposed age. Will they be true stories, Aunt Ella? Every single word, Ella promised. Nothing but the truth from now on. Roland drove north through the snow, leaving behind the comfortable life built on lies, and heading toward an uncertain future built on truth. The road ahead was dark and dangerous and full of people who would do anything to keep their conspiracy hidden. But for the first time in 2 years, Roland Ellison knew exactly who his daughter was. And he knew exactly what he was willing to sacrifice to keep her safe. Everything. He would burn it all down if he had to, because that's what fathers do. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. Kindly support what I do here by subscribing. And then drop in the comment section if you like part 2 of Roland, Ella, and Lily's story. What challenges will they face as they fight the Heritage Group? How will they expose the conspiracy without losing Lily forever? Let me know if you want to hear more.